As a disclaimer, the Red Rock Democratic Club is hosting this event for informational and educational purposes only and does not constitute an endorsement from our club.
The guy who owns who's making 400 times isn't spending that money. So there's really a question here about how do we get back to a much more just, much more equitable America? And the answer is we're going to have to break some eggs. And that's just fine.
Our next question comes from Chloe Freeman.
Thank you for coming, Mrs. Steyer. You said your number one priority is the environment, but the top 3 priorities in Nevada, according to Google Trends, is healthcare, unemployment, and wages. And there are rumors that there could possibly be an economic slowdown later next year or something. Trump is already threatening, as you said, the Democrats are going to end up. Sorry for cussing.
I think that was pretty clean.
But being that the Fed and then Trump has lowered interest rates so much already, if there was any sort of economic slowdown, what would you do to counteract that?
So let me say this. I did say, Chloe, just so you know, on the debate stage, it is the economy, stupid. It is the economy. And everybody knows it. And when I talk about climate, I'm saying biggest job creator in American history, good paying union jobs across the country. It's actually, in a way, going to change the most union participation in the labor force since 1945. It's a huge economic boost. And let me say this about Mr. Trump, and you make a good point. Yeah, this is a guy who went bust on casinos. I mean, we're in Nevada. You set the win rate. How do you go bust? So what he's doing with the United States of America, let's see how he went bust on casinos. He made a lot of false claims. You know, the Trump Taj Mahal, now an empty relic on the beach. He claimed a bunch of stuff. He borrowed a lot of money. Check, check. He went bankrupt and he walked away. We are his latest casino project. Because what you're saying is he's gotten the Fed to lower rates to really low. So you can't really do monetary policy from here. He blew up the deficit. He swore he was going to balance the budget. We have $1 trillion deficit at full employment. Does it remind you of, say, the Trump Taj Mahal? And you're saying, what happens if, in fact, we hit a recession? Yes, because it's sort of like he's taken all the bullets out of the gun and shot them into the air, and now if there's a real problem, we got nothing. Yes, I understand that. And so the truth is, we are going to have to rebuild America. I mean, it's not just that he does bad stuff, he does really bad stuff. I mean, the idea of giving tax breaks to rich people and big corporations and cutting health care and retirement savings is wrong. But he doesn't do the good stuff. Like, how do you actually have a prosperous country? You actually have to do stuff. You have to educate kids. You have to support working people. You have to have health care. So he's not doing that. So in the short run, are we going to have to deal with whatever problem is bedeviling American citizens? Of course we are. And that may mean running bigger deficits. But in the long run, are we going to have to invest in the American people, both from a standpoint of growth and of justice? Look, one of the things I also say is, I'm one of the people who thinks every single issue in the United States has an unspoken but important issue of race underneath it. And so does growth, and so does education. I said that I'm a climate person who starts with environmental justice. When I think about Mr. Trump, what he's not doing about justice in our society in terms of race and ethnicity and in terms of growth is also deeply wrong. So are we going to do it completely differently? I mean, it's kind of like if he does it, I assume it's wrong. And we're going to do it another way.
The next question comes, over here. There we go. Next question comes from Chet Kaufman.
Hello, Tom. Welcome to Nevada.
Hey, Chad.
In a couple of months, I can envision you being on stage, one-to-one, with one of the most narcissistic, babbling, crooked idiots that ever walked on this world.
Is it Rudy Giuliani?
The seat behind you, Lou. You're going to have one of two choices. You're going to either be able to stoop to his level with insults and all kinds of smearing remarks, and I'm sure he's going to tweet these all over the world before this time, or you can sit there and try to explain what you're explaining to us and hope he'll understand it and get the message. What approach will you take?
Well, let me say this, Chad. I'll first say something facetious and then I'll give you the actual answer. I mean, sometimes I say to people, which is true, I have two older brothers. They're both smarter than Mr. Trump, and they're both meaner than Mr. Trump. I can't let him bug me at all because I've had much worse than him. But here's the actual truth. I don't think of myself as a tough person. But if I'm on that stage, that means I'm representing you. I'm representing all the people who are seniors, whose retirement he wants to cut, whose health care he wants to cut. I represent every 3-year-old kid whose chance is that we support him or her. And I represent working people who are getting ripped off and having very difficult lives, unable to pay for health care for their kids, struggling with rent, struggling with food. You know, I know in this country that there is an increasing sex trafficking of young people. I hear about it. I hadn't heard about it before 2018, and now I hear about it almost every stop. If you think that I will take a step back from somebody like that, who's causing all that pain in a cruel and insensitive way, and that I would let him get away with that, I don't think of myself as a tough person, but I'd rather die than do that.
Tom, Vicki is the member of our Red Rock Democratic Club, one of our newest members, but she has graciously passed her question to her daughter, Juliana, who we're also hoping will soon join our club.
Hi, I'm actually Greg. Both my parents are retired military, both were Marines. Most of my family members are also Marines or retired. My question is, what are your plans for homeless veterans and homeless people?
So let's start with the veteran part of the question. It is unbearable to see homeless veterans. I feel as if for the people who have committed everything to us, we have to be committed back to them with everything. I feel as if our government has been reckless with the lives of military personnel, a willingness to go to war and to put them in harm's way, and then feel when they come home everything's fine if they come back with no bodily harm. And I think we all know that that's not true. So I will have you know, I want to talk about homelessness and housing for a second, but you should know that in Las Vegas, Nevada, there is a very innovative homeless vets program that I've visited several times that I have a lot of respect for, where they're pushing hard both to provide housing and to provide wraparound services, which homeless people need and homeless veterans need, in terms of mental health, food, and the other things to get back on their feet besides just a roof over their head. So I believe, let's start with homelessness in general. We have over 7 million too few affordable housing units in this country. And that means we have a housing crisis that exists across the country and affects everybody. And the most painful aspect of it is homelessness. And so I would more than double the amount of money that we spend on homelessness at the federal level. I would spend hundreds of billions of dollars to build affordable housing units and renovate affordable housing units, because One of the lies that Ronald Reagan told was that the market will provide, it's just, you don't have to be in the housing business, federal government. Not true. We are 4 decades into proving that the market is not going to provide affordable housing. And so we're going to have to do it. And for homeless people, we're also going to have to provide wraparound services, including specifically mental health. And let me say this, mental health is health. You know, I always say to people, you never show up at the doctor's and say, I have a broken leg, and he says, come back in 3 months and I'll set it. But if you show up with a mental health issue, they do say things like that all the time. We have way too much money, way too little money devoted to mental health. I would put in an extra $100 billion a year. I would put in another $75 billion to dealing with the opioid crisis that I consider different but related. America and see what's going on, there is an enormous amount of pain associated with mental health. And it includes really, really young kids. I don't know if you know that. Huge issue of mental health with little kids. For kids who are incarcerated under 18, I think something like half the boys and 2/3 of the girls have some form of true mental health issue. The cost to them and their families and to society is enormous. For us not to deal with this, and in terms of homelessness, not to have those services in addition to a roof, is something that's unrealistic. And so, how are we going to deal with homelessness? The government, we're going to have to get rid of this idea that a government is unnecessary and realize that a government is very necessary. And we're going to have to build millions of units. They're going to have to be climate smart. It's going to create an awful lot of good paying union jobs. And we're going to have to get back to the idea that we can't just look away from the things we don't like and think the market will take care of it. It's not going to. This problem is a long time in the making. We can solve it, but we can't solve it by pretending it's not happening.
Over here, John. Our next question comes from my predecessor, the former president of this club and our current ex officio board member, Dan Kruger.
Tom, thank you for coming and spending some time with us here this afternoon. My question has to do with student debt. There's Democratic candidates that are espousing the idea that student debt, currently all student debt and all student debt into perpetuity is it should be forgiven. And so my question to you is, do you support that approach? And if so, how would you pay for it?
Well, Dan, let me say this. I am a huge believer in education. I've been saying how important I think early education is in terms of how much it means to people's lives. And I believe college should be affordable for every kid in America. Here's my plan. And let me say, 44 million people with student debt, half of them have delayed getting married or having a kid because of it. So it is a real, deep, personal problem for those people. My answer is 2 years of free community college for anybody. We do that in California. We can afford to do that. 1% interest rate on the debt. What's really happening with student debt is you start with $30,000 of debt, and by the time it's over, you have $80,000 of debt. The interest rate, I don't want to be too wonky, it's not that complicated, but the average interest rate of the debt held by the government is over 6%, and of the debt held by banks, it's over 10%. So if you have $30,000 or $35,000 worth of debt, you're going to end up paying multiples of that. And to the extent you can't meet it, those rates go up and it just chews you up. 1%. And second, so first is 2 years of free community college. Second is 1% debt. And the third thing is this. If you go to work for the country or the community, so if you're in the military, you're a teacher, you're a social worker, you're a nurse, at the end of 10 years, it just gets wiped away as part of your service. It's affordable, it's doable, everybody can do it, and we don't start to have kids. We're just trying to get an education and be good people and good citizens.
Thank you.
The next question comes from board member at large, Howard Beckerman.
Thank you. Can I get a round of applause for Michael Weiss, the president of the the New York City public school system.
Which one?
Bronx High School of Science.
My father was a boys' high. If you guys don't know, Bronx High School of Science is where the truly smart kids go. That was
That's where the good-looking kids are. I'm also the proud husband of somebody who's part of a majority female Supreme Court. My question to you is that in the last few years, we've seen a split in the Democratic Party. We have a progressive wing, we have a moderate wing. Two-part question. What do you say to the progressive wing to tell them that they would want to unite with the moderate wing of the Democratic Party to beat President Trump? And the second part is, what do you say to the moderate wing of the Democratic Party that says you need to take and unite with the progressives to beat President Trump?
So that is a really important question. And it may be one that we're actually going to have to answer in order to beat Mr. Trump. So let me start by saying the first thing I ever said on the debate stage, I didn't answer their question. I said, before I say anything else, I want to say that everyone on this stage is 1,000,000 times better than that criminal in the White House. No matter what, I will be 100% behind any Democrat. You know the old saying, a yellow dog Democrat? You know what it means? It means you vote for a yellow dog if they had a D next to their name. I would. It's not a close call. So what would I say? Look, I'm a progressive, and I'll tell you why. I truly believe that Mr. Reagan, President Reagan, changed the way we think about American society. And he basically, in a very, very bad way. FDR did it in a very, very good way. Ronald Reagan basically has a 5-part program. This is going to answer your question, I hope. 1, lower taxes on rich people and big corporations. It will increase tax revenues. False. It will trickle down to everybody else in society. False. I mean, there's no excuse, but that's the #1 rule of President Reagan is the tax cut for rich people and big corporations. #2 rule, cut spending on education, both K through 12 and higher ed. It's just an expense. Okay, that's insane. So that's the #2 rule. #3 rule, cut health care. Look at what they do in every single state they take over. They don't even take Medicaid extension that's free. They've tried to repeal the Affordable Care Act multiple times. They do it in every single state. 4, allow pollution. If you need to poison people to make money, so be it. We're good with it. We won't even notice. And 5, break unions. That we can't have working people organizing and standing up for themselves. We have to break them and make sure that we keep the minimum wage low, we keep the cost of labor low, and we think of people as commodities to be considered not as partners in the enterprise, not as working people with rights, but as widgets to be minimized and get the cost down. So as a progressive, I feel like there's no middle. Which of those do I want to meet in the middle? I disagree with every single one of those fundamentally. And so I would say to every moderate, let's beat these guys. They don't want to meet with us in the middle. Let's really tell, I say I'm for reparations for slavery. I want to tell the truth in American society. I think it's time, and I think that's how we live. That I believe in my heart that the way we win is tell the truth, do the grassroots work, get turnout across the diverse Democratic base and the diverse American society, and win. And so I say to moderates, come along. They don't want to meet with us in the middle. There is no middle anymore. So we have to win. And I would say to progressives, if for some reason it's a moderate candidate, okay, 1,000,000 times better is 1,000,000 times better. I mean, I'm a progressive, and I want to declare a state of emergency on climate on day one. There are people running for president as Democrats who think that natural gas is a bridge fuel to the future. I disagree. But I know that they're not denying science. And so ultimately the question is the first question I said, which is, I probably no one agrees with anyone else on everything. But we agree on the basics. We don't agree necessarily on how to get there, but we agree on where we're trying to get. And so we've got to put everything aside the minute we have a candidate and just go for it. And there can't be a Green Party, and there can't be a Socialist Party. There's just got to be a Democratic Party.
Okay, Tom. So now we're going to open it to questions from the entire audience.
Not from this group.
They're going to raise their hand. You're going to point to a hand, and we have Miguel Ruben on that side with the mics, and yes, on that side. Okay, go for it.
Okay, start with the woman in the front row. Look, wait, I think they're going to give you a mic.
Thank you for inviting me. What I'm worried about is I'm almost 63 years old, and they said that Social Security is in dire straits, and by the time that I retire, I retire in about 7 years, Social Security is going to be practically obsolete by 2035. Is that true?
The short answer is, as I said, over my dead body. No, that can't happen. Look, the way that Social Security works is people pay Social Security tax up to $133,000 and nothing above. That's an absolutely random number. There's nothing that was not sent down by God on a tablet. That was written by somebody in the Congress of the United States after lunch. We are going to make sure that under no circumstance does Social Security Trust Fund go bust. If anything, we need higher Social Security, period. And we cannot lower it under any circumstances. Okay, right there.
My question is, why aren't we going to do term limits, and that's fine, but I don't think that's pie in the sky, because it's a congressional, we have to have an amendment to the Constitution. Instead of that amendment, why don't you go after eliminating the electoral college, so that my vote is as valuable as a California voter, or a New York voter, or an Ohio voter, which has more people in it.
So let me talk about the Electoral College for 1 second. The way the Electoral College works pretty much is winner take all by state. So that if your state goes whatever, then everybody's vote in that state counts for that. It's winner take all. So if California goes blue by 1 vote, it's 100% blue. And so what really ends up happening in the Electoral College is there are a few number of states that could go either way. Somewhere between 7 and 11. And so candidates spend 100% of their time in those 7 to 11 states, and they ignore the other 39 to 43 states. Well, let me say this. The biggest thing that we're really talking about here in my mind is the idea that we can change the American system. Yeah. Because that is because what we've really seen is a sense that we're just stuck. That we can't change the Electoral College, we can't change term limits, we can't change, really we've gotten to a point, we can't pass a budget. We can't get really affordable health care, we can't get background checks on guns. As opposed to a huge thing like a constitutional amendment, this government has been broken and it's working, basically it stopped working for Americans because it's been purchased by corporations. And that's the biggest thing. Of course I'm for ending the Electoral College. Of course I'm for actually lost the popular vote by almost 3 million votes. And then we could see that again.
And folks, we have time for 2 more questions. Preferably if it's something, a subject that Tom has not touched on today.
I have a question from a high school senior. I hope you can take this, because your answer might reverberate all the way through Lake Oswego High School. You don't mind if I big this, do you? All right. Okay, so Max Bloom of Lake Oswego High School in Lake Oswego, Oregon, wanted me to ask you this question. He came with this question yesterday. He wanted to know what support you would suggest or would endorse for trade schools. Now, he bought a slot machine recently on Craigslist, and he brought it home and it didn't work. So he went on the internet and found that there are 10 classic flaws with 1939 slot machines. And he went through that and said, hey, this isn't that hard to fix. He got one of his buddies to come over, and together they fixed this 1939 10-cent slot machine. So that's a little bit of background. Now, so he's interested in what sort of support you suggest for trade schools.
So let me say this to Max Bloom. I love trade schools because not everyone in this world wants to be a computer programmer. But a lot of people in this world want to have good paying, skilled labor jobs. And if in fact we're going to rebuild America, we're going to need millions of people who can do those jobs. So when I think about what the community college system means to my home state of California, 2.2 million kids right now in community college in California. And a lot of them are learning trades. So I love that because it really gives people a living wage and a real positive road in life that is necessary for the country and necessary for their communities and their families. And anything we can do through community colleges, through working with unions who do a lot of training as well, or through some combination of, unions where it leads directly to a job and you get paid along the way, I am absolutely supportive of. In my mind, that kind of preparation is something that is important for everybody, including society, and we should be investing in that so kids can see a positive road ahead for themselves that makes sense, that they can put together a living wage and a family.
We are running very short time, and the Steyer crew has to get ready for you guys to take photos. But, Mr. Steyer, while they're getting things set up, I have a question related to the Supreme Court that I think many of our guests here also are on their mind. So, right now, the Supreme Court and several of our federal courts stacked with conservatives. And there have been proposals. One of your opponents has suggested a judicial lottery of rotating judges from the Supreme Court and the federal circuit courts. There's one of your other opponents that has suggested using something called a balanced court, where partisan judges then somehow choose neutral judges. I forget how that works. So, what proposals do you have? Do you agree with either of those proposals? And if not, what can we do to effectively keep conservative judges from destroying the progressive agenda?
The president is a Democrat. Right.
That's the first thing. Let me say this. I believe that Mitch McConnell has stacked the federal judiciary unethically at the Supreme Court and across the entire country. And he's refused to allow President Obama to appoint judges, and so Mr. Trump has appointed the judges to fill President Obama's slots as well as his own. It's unbearable. It's an attempt by a minority, right-wing, radical party to take over the country for an additional generation through what I think of as very straightforwardly unethical maneuver. So what am I willing to do? Anything legal. Am I willing to have more than 9 Supreme Court justices? Yes. Look, Democrats have not been fighting that hard. These guys have been playing really rough with us. We are going to have to push back hard. They are trying to take over the country with a bunch of radical right-wing young justices. And they are willing to do it, and we are going to have to push back, and we have not been willing to push back as hard as they're willing to push. And I'm sorry, but that's where we are, and the country's at risk. And I don't think, that's why I say I'm not meeting in the middle. We're going to have to win. If President Trump gets reelected, he's got 2 more Supreme Court picks, probably. And I don't even know where that leaves us. I literally don't know where that leaves us, because there's so many other things that I don't understand that could be so bad that I don't really want to imagine. I just want to do everything we can to make sure we win. And the judges are a huge part of this. And would I do more than 9? Yes. My attitude is anything legal is what I'm willing to do.
Yeah.
Disbar bar. All right. No, but let me say this. Look, Nevada really matters. You guys really matter. This is the first state. There is a huge statement coming out of here next Saturday, one way or the other. It's absolutely critical that you guys show up. I mean, I am willing to do anything to push back against these guys. I view this as we have an immoral president hurting Americans willfully. And I can tell you, I've traveled around this country full time. This is my 8th year of meeting Americans. And when you talk to them and you hear the story of what they're suffering and why, it is unbearable to think about hunger in America in 2020. It is unbearable to think about people who can't afford their meds in 2020. There is pain in this country at a level that is unacceptable and completely unnecessary. They have tried to convince people there's no money in this country to invest in Americans and to support Americans. We're the richest country in the history of the planet. There's plenty of money here. They don't want to pay tax. They don't want rich people or corporations to pay tax, and they're willing to have people suffer as a result across the board. And the idea that they're, after the election, going to go after Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security almost boggles the mind. So I am asking you, I will do anything, I'm not kidding, I will do anything legal to push back against this people. There's no other way here. People say that there is no middle with people who deny climate. What are you supposed to do? There's no middle with racists. What are we going to be, racist 3 days a week and decent 4 days a week? No, there's no middle. When you think about taking away people's health care and retirement, what is the middle? Exactly. Are women fully people deserving of equal rights with everyone else or not? That's a straight up question. There's no middle. So that is, I'm asking you guys to help me. I will do this. I will not, I said, I will not back up. I won't back up because I couldn't look at myself in the mirror if I backed up. Couldn't do it. And that's it. Yes, ma'am.
The insurance company, and she's a school teacher in Washington State, pays a high premium because she has a lot of problems. The insurance company now refuses to pay for this drug because they call it experimental for her cancer. Fortunately, I have a son who can afford to help her, and he's willing to pay. It's $25,000 a month for this drug. So it's the insurance company, it's the pharmaceutical houses.
And where is the government? Where is the government to push back? What we're seeing from drug companies is unconscionable. And it's across the board. It is unconscionable, and for the government not to be pushing back against that is a gigantic failure. And, the issue is, I think these companies own the government. That definitely includes the drug companies, the insurance companies, and the private hospitals. We pay twice as much as healthcare we should. The government has to bring down the cost of healthcare and fight these people head on, and I promise I will do. Thank you guys very much. Thank you guys very much.